Hey guys, welcome to the Refined Savage. This week on the show we have Brandon Lilly. Brandon was an absolute maniac in the powerlifting world for a lot of years, both in gear down at Westside and Raw. We didn't talk that much about training this thing. We talked a lot about life in general and the struggles he's gone through, and his quest for redemption and becoming a better human. And it was a really, really great conversation. I know you're going to dig this one. Check it out.
Brandon Lilly, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, we're down here at University of Ashland. Judd Logan got us together. You're here to talk to the team, give them a little motivational uplift in their early season prep.
Yeah, hopefully I can avoid some of or guide them from some of the pitfalls that I've seen throughout my life. But yeah, I met Coach Logan a few years ago through Sorinex and through the Summer Strong events, and just a guy that at first honestly intimidated me, not because of who he is or the way that he carried himself, but just, you know, the things that he's seen, the things that he's done. I just had a high respect for that. And, you know, he's everything opposite of what I thought. He's such a kind guy. He's very intense, but he's very, very giving too. So I'm very, very happy to be here.
Yeah, I always say he's been mentioned more times on our podcast than I have. You know, every person we've had on here has been touched in some way by him over the years.
I think the older I get, the more I look to people, and I've actually got a friend out in California. His name's Jason. I call him the nucleus because at the center of everything is him. But I've made so many connections and made some really great friendships because of the relationship that I had with him. He's like, man, you got to meet this guy, or man, you got to get on the phone with this guy. So Judd is definitely a lightning rod for a lot of people. I mean, you know, through his own career and then obviously the 25 years here at Ashland. I think somebody like him is very, very special. And it's good that it's recognized while he's alive because it's certainly going to be felt when he's gone. Yeah. And I try to cling to those kind of people for selfish reasons and also from the reason of just learning how to live a little better, you know. Yeah. Judd's a guy that I'd have no problem modeling after.
Yeah. And he's 60 years old, but if you look at Poliquin, who went at 57, you know, I mean, and he'll be a guy who's talked about, forever. He had that kind of impact on the strength and conditioning world, and you have guys in all different, you know, modes. Fred Hatfield, you know, another guy who, you know, was gone too soon, some say, even though everyone kind of saw it coming with the way he took care of his body and with the smoking and everything, And Louie's another guy that once Louie goes, you know, that's the end for Westside. Might be the end for geared powerlifting once Louie goes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people tied to the sport, you know, because of Louie, and they continue in that direction, maybe as some kind of internal respect. You know, that was definitely my draw to multiply powerlifting. I started as a raw lifter, had really no clue what I was doing other than I was just competing against whoever showed up. My appeal to Powerlifting USA, the Louis articles, and then obviously it was the dichotomy of you had the really great lifting, but then you had that kind of outlaw status. Right. That spoke to me. That's very much where I grew up. You know, some of the best people I know are outlaws. Yeah. And that was just kind of felt like a thing that was really cool to me. And then you see these guys at a meet, and you see the brotherhood, you see the connection, and then you see the high level. I attribute that to Louie, and I wanted to emulate that, so I wanted to learn from Louie and all that. So guys like Judd, guys like Louie, guys like Charles Poliquin, you can't ever replace them. And I think in some small way, the gift that they give is that somebody that was under their tutelage steps up and maybe carries the banner a little bit further down the road. You know, I think that's all that any of us can hope for. I mean, I have a son, and that's really it. You know, I can remember my grandfather when I was younger always talking about, you have a name. And when you're a kid, you just kind of shrug it off. But then as you get a little bit older, it's like, I'm his dad and he's my son. And I'm really the only person, you know, besides his mother that is preparing him for the rest of his life. And I know how hard life can be. I'm sure you do too. I don't want him to struggle the same way that I've struggled. Mm-hmm. I want him to see things differently and live a better life than I have. But, it's all rooted in just the respect. You know, I had a tremendous amount of respect for Louis, so that's kind of why I follow that direction. And if it had been another day, another time, and a different magazine, I might have found somebody else. But my guy was Louis. So
Right. How old's your son?
he's 11, just turned 11.
Yeah. And how old are you?
I'm 36.
Yeah. This before we got in here, we were kind of talking to you and Judd about your journey a little bit and how things changed for you. And one of the whole purposes behind me doing this podcast was this idea of the refined savage, where you were at one point, your whole world revolved around one thing, and that was, for me it was throwing far, for you it was lifting more, and it didn't matter, the route that you took to get there, and that was the only thing that was important. And now now that you get older, you kind of reevaluate your priorities. And I have a 13-year-old son, so I kind of get that, and it was about that same time, he was 9-10 years old, where things started to change around, and you start to realize what's important, as opposed to this sport that's very fleeting for all of us.
Well, I mean, I look at it like this. I started lifting at 17. I lifted at a very, very high level for 15 years. I mean, the first competition I did, I won the state meet, and then I qualified for nationals. So it's not like I had this introductory pace and just took my time. It was very in line with the way that I felt as an athlete. Like, if I was doing something, I wanted to be good at it, and I wanted to be good at it now. Not that I always was, but that was my mindset. So having those feelings at 17 and doing it for 15 years at that level, leading up until my injury, I probably got higher than I ever thought I would climb. And that's something that I pride myself in very, very much, because it wasn't something that I was immediately good at. It was something that I had to work at. And then over time, I found a groove, and I got better and better and better. But I think, as I mentioned before, and I hate to say the cliche of injury, is that it was the best thing that happened to me. But the path that I was on was very self-destructive. I would put powerlifting above everything, even my health, even my friends, my family. I just wanted to be good at something. And I mean, that's been a trend throughout my entire life. I can remember in third grade getting in trouble because on an essay that we had to write about what we wanted to be when we grew up, my answer was I wanted to be great. And I didn't know what I wanted to be great at. I just wanted to be great. And, that's driven me. It drives me now. Like, I feel like I have this restlessness inside of me to make an impact, and not in a way that, I'll be honest, I don't need money. I don't need followers, as far as Instagram and stuff. I think at one time I chased those things, but very much now I would rather be in a room or a situation like Coach Logan, where you've got people that will come back and see you because you changed their life. Like you talked about the connection. I want to be the kind of person that kind of turns the light around on others now. And that's why, I started doing a podcast too. I'd love to have you on. It gives me the chance to be active and involved around the world that I love so much, which is strength. But I get to shine a little bit of light on somebody else. Yeah. And somebody might listen to it because they're like, oh, I'm a Brandon Lilly fan, but then they become a fan of whoever.
Absolutely.
The days of me seeking fans or whatever you want to call it is that sounds kind of crazy in itself, but
no. For a while there, you were skyrocketing.
Yeah, it was about as good as it could get, and it felt good. I mean, it hits those dopamine receptors, and people like you. People say that you're your friend, but man, I've seen the throes of what happens when you're not on top anymore, and I saw it very, very quickly, because one day I was on top, the next day I was in a hospital bed, and through it all. Not to bash anyone, not to negate anyone. There were just people that I thought would have been there through it that weren't, and there were people that surprised the hell out of me. And one thing that I did do through all of that was I did kind of a self-evaluation, and I realized that I had been a pretty significant asshole. Like I was telling Judd, my mom asking me to come home for Christmas. I got to train at Westside today. I can't be home for Christmas.
Yeah.
Those are hurtful things.
Right.
Even if they're not just out and out like cruel, they're hurtful in a way. And I don't know the exact number, but it was well over 100. I think it was closer to 200 text messages to people that just cared about me, and I knew it, but I was like, once this is over, everything will be all right. Once this career is over, send out apologies. Hey, look, I'm sorry. And they'd heard it before. They'd heard the excuses. They'd heard all that stuff. I got a lot of, fuck yous. I got a lot of silence. And I got a few people that said, you know what, this is a good start.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. I was trying to reconcile myself and make the apologies that needed to be made. And it was good for me that started the healing process. And it just gave me a chance to really start over. And I think once I started healing emotionally, then I could look at myself differently as a lifter. I didn't have to be this guy anymore.
Right.
I wanted to be, but I didn't have to be. And, I rededicated myself as a father, rededicated myself to my family, my friends, and very, very easy for me to skip a training day to go do something with them.
Right.
And I wish I had known those things when I was younger, but it's almost like I had to go to the brink of just absolution, because I was very much in the mindset that if I gave it all, then I could never look back with regret.
Yeah.
And sadly, it led to a lot of regret in other ways.
Yeah, I mean, we're all going to have regrets one way or another, no matter what we do. I wonder if your story is very much different from, any other high performance athlete. I mean, are guys on the Bulgarian weightlifting team having any less regrets because they had to train 3 times a day and didn't see their families? And what's interesting to me is, you talked about kind of having to make up when people sent you a bunch of text messages, and it's interesting to me that you have to be the same guy you were when you were 28, no matter what. That's just the way those people are always going to see you.
Yep.
And you're not the same guy you were yesterday
No.
or this morning, and you keep evolving and you have to keep growing. And the people who don't do that are the ones that are going to be the ones with the most regrets, I think.
Sure.
It's hard for people who probably knew you when you were 26 or 27 to look at you now and go, maybe he's full of shit.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to get better. You're allowed to, I was a total asshole when I was in my 20s and 30s,
Well,
but I didn't care. I just wanted to throw far.
I think John Welborn put it best. I was talking to him the other day. He said, I call all my regret and my hard times my 20s.
Yeah. Right.
And I made the comment to Judd. I walked the line from the time I was born till I was 25. And the mistakes I started making at 25, I should have made at 18. Mm-hmm. I just had it flip-flopped. And there's no excuses for it. Just went through a rough patch with my job. Family life was kind of scattered because of that. And then I lost 2 very significant people in my life in the proximity of about 4 months. So I go from everything's perfect, everything's a white picket fence, the house, the kid, the wife, to it looked like a hurricane hit my life. And I look back now, and there are long stretches of periods at Westside where I remember the highs and the lows, but I don't remember a lot of the in-between. And I don't know if that was like a psychological detachment or if it was a depression or whatever you want to call it. Whatever it is, I accept it fully. But I think that I'm really, really good at masking, saying, okay, I'm running towards my goal, but not admitting that I was running from all my problems.
Yeah.
And I think anybody that wants to talk about anything in my life, I'll sit down and have a conversation with you if the end goal is understanding. Not that I'm going to excuse myself.
Sure.
I hold a very, very high standard to myself, and I'll tell you that I was wrong many, many times. But I can at least give you the background on how I got to a situation that might have you say, okay, don't approve, but I can at least see the steps that led you there. And that's really all you can do, is that self-evaluation and being honest with yourself. What were my motivations at this point? And at that point in time, my answer would clearly always be I wanted to be the best lifter I could. My motivations were driven around that. And it did make me choose very poorly in some situations that I regret. But I can tell you too, and I say this carefully because I don't want people to go out and make bad mistakes or bad choices, but I wake up very, very happy this day and age. I wake up very content with my family, very content with my friends, the work that I do, and I just believe that I had to go through that shitstorm to get to here. I wish that it would have been a little bit easier, but I hold on to it a little bit tighter now because I know what it's worth. So if somebody's out there that happens to hear this and they think, man, that guy's full of shit or that guy's an asshole, I was a guy that was full of shit a lot of the time. I was a guy that was definitely an asshole. And you may meet me and think that today, but I can tell you that I'm consciously trying to be aware of everything that I do, and I'm trying to always put at least others on the same level in my decision making, if not above myself. So I feel like I've been pretty selfish for a long time, and I'm okay with that. But now I have to choose better if I recognize it, you know.
And you're in your 30s, so I mean,
you
got a lot of time to make that stuff happen, you know.
You know, I just had I had good people in my life like Bert Soren at Sorenex, my dad, people that were in places or stages of our life that I looked at and wanted to be at, but I never believed I could get there. And not from a financial standpoint, but just they looked happy. Their family looked like they loved them, things like that. And my dad was always giving me advice. And one day it just kind of started to stick, you know. I was always the kid that if you told me to go left, I went right. If you told me not to do something, I did it twice. You know, I just had a rebellious nature. And I think now, especially having a son that's coming into middle school, he's coming into puberty, you start to see like, man, all those things that my dad warned me about, all those things my dad gave me advice upon, he was never giving me the wrong advice. Right. I just couldn't hear it. And that's really what life is. It's perspective. You know, I'm pretty empathetic these days, you know, because I've seen some people in some really bad situations, and if you're willing to sit down and talk to them, a guy didn't wake up one morning and decide to stick a heroin needle in his arm.
Yeah, right.
You know, there's 1,000 decisions that led to that point. So can he get out of that? It's probably going to take more than 1,000 good decisions to get away from it. But I understand most people don't just catastrophically destroy their lives on one decision.
Yeah.
It can happen, you know, but most of the times people get worn down by life. They don't drink and then they start drinking a little bit to go to sleep. And I just see it and I understand. And I want to heal others because it heals me too. Mm-hmm. So maybe there is still a little bit of that selfishness in there because in talking to people and understanding helps me understand myself.
Well, it's some self-preservation.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, we were talking about, it's funny, there's a Finland keychain because we were talking about Finland at lunch. I don't remember the word, but Finland has the highest suicide rate in the world. And a lot of it's to do with that daytime or the seasonal affective disorder. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But they have a word that just means as long as you make it. It translates roughly to that. And we were talking about their drug culture, which is very open because we would rather you do a little bit of meth or a little bit of cocaine or a little bit of weed or whatever it is to get tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
You know, and here in this country, we automatically, if we see somebody doing a drug, we automatically condemn them as wrong. And many times they are in the wrong because it's excessive and abusive. But if all somebody was doing was just trying to get to the next day, is it a bad thing?
Yeah.
You know? And who am I to say that what they're doing, if it gets them through and you know, this is a rough spot in their life and they do a little bit of this or a little bit of that, like I'll just use alcohol as an example. I come from a long line of alcoholics. So I know that it probably starts just to cope with something because, you know, I had some pretty tough people in my family, some outlaw types and whatnot. They did some bad stuff, you know, and I think that was tied to it. But at the same time, at some point, if you stop doing the bad stuff, you don't have to cope with it, you know, and that's what connected with me too is, well, why am I drinking this drink? Why am I doing this? And why am I doing that? Well, if I stop doing all the stuff that I'm running from, then I don't need any of that to mask what I'm feeling. So at some point, to get out of that swirl, you've got to start taking ownership for everything.
And you just make one step at a time.
Exactly.
You don't have to change everything at once.
Exactly. I think that's huge.
Baby steps. Yeah, that's really interesting. It's good to hear, and I think it's a lesson that more people need to learn. That, you know, your life is not set in stone at 30, and your life is not set in stone at 60. There's a lot of choices to be made in there, and you can go one way or you can go the other. You talked about lifting at Westside, but your career really took off when you left Westside.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it's odd to me that everybody who's making money in the fitness, in the weightlifting, powerlifting, genre,
Yeah.
a lot of them are ex-West Side lifters who, once they left West Side, took off.
Yeah.
You and Mark Bell and Dave Tate and Jim Wendler,
Matt Wenning.
Matt Wenning.
Yeah.
It's we talked about like being on the Bulgarian lifting team where you don't have that freedom.
Yeah.
It seems like, and then when you're let loose, you have some freedom to do what you want, but you still all this knowledge you took from West Side to back it up. So.
Yeah. I never really thought about it till you said that, but it is it's a pretty select group. When people ask me about business within this industry and stuff, I'm very much a success story on timing, because you look at my numbers, even at the biggest in multiply or in raw, at the time I lifted, they were at the top of the sport. Right now, I would be 100 kilos behind the best guy, right? So I had my moment in the sun because the sport was growing, and I had that little moment. But going through I don't care where you go. I don't care what system you look at. If you look at an automobile or a house or a business or anything, each individual can find things that they love about it, and they can find things that they would change about it. So the cube method was never this idea of, hey, I want to sell this as a product. I want this to become a thing. It was an honest attempt to take what I'd learned at Westside, maintain as much of that as I could, and then adapt it more to a level where I felt comfortable. So Sakari Cyrilenko, I probably butchered his name. He's a Finnish deadlift coach, tied into the Westside system, visits Westside, I think, at least every other year, if not every year. And I was talking to him about competing raw, and he told me some stories about his deadlift training, that they lifted heavy, they lifted for repetition, and then they did like a bodybuilding day on the third week. So I tried that, and I got a little better, but I hated the bodybuilding week. I wanted to do like speed work because that's what I was used to. Deadlift, which was a stagnant lift at that time, progressed. Why can't this work with the bench press? It progressed. Mm-hmm. Well, now we need to make a system. So a guy named Jimmy Harris, he now owns the Dog Pound in Columbus.
Okay.
He bought it from Tim Matty, which again was a very West Side pro friendly gym. And then Jimmy and I were training at Lexington at the time with Chuck Vogelpohl and some others.
Where everybody goes right.
Yeah, so we were training over there, and it was just kind of an ongoing experiment. Michael Kartinian had moved there from Big Iron. So you had a lot of knowledge base in this one room. Mike Johnson, as a strongman, was training there. Yeah. Pretty damn good group of guys. And there was just this, I felt like there wasn't an expectation to train any one way. Michael Kartinian would take the lead on some of the lifts, like the bench shirts, because they came from Big Iron. They had a great reputation, so we did a lot of their work on the bench shirts. We still pretty much did bands and chain stuff, but Chuck had some ideas of having the chains fully suspended. Mm-hmm. It was just a think tank, really. Right. And it took off from there. But I think it all stemmed from the fact that you get people who are on the fringe. They've been through the fire at Westside. Mm-hmm. They got to this level, and they're still looking to push. And for me, that comes in asking questions. That comes in trying new things. So I think that's your answer right there. Is you get a lot of notoriety being inside those walls, and then you get the test. What's he going to do outside of those walls? Mm-hmm. And if you're lucky enough to have a little bit of success and do a few things, I think people are like, okay, it's not just the system, it's this guy.
Right.
I became a fan of this guy. And then, again, honestly, I just started sharing what I was doing in the gym, and people took interest to it for whatever reason. I have no idea why. But people connected to it, and then Chad Smith at Juggernaut was like, well, let's just take these articles that you've written and expand on them, condense them, put them in a book. I had no idea it would become anything close to what it's become. I've almost kind of resented it in a way because I didn't know I was writing a book. Right. And to the to the respect of the people like a Poliquin or, even a Matt Wenning with his tactical book, people that really put some time into these books. Mine were just extended training logs,
right?
And when a coach like a Judd Logan, he says, "Man, I got your cube method," I'm almost like, God, God, I wish I had done this. Like, I wish I knew I was writing a book. So I'm doing that now, but the intention is not to make it a money thing. I want to sell it for $10 or $15, which also gets you membership to a Cube-friendly website where it's a forum type deal, brings people together so they get something more than just the book. But I do feel like I deserve the chance to write the book, and I also feel like for the people who believed in the method and believed in me, this is a very low spectrum way for them to connect with me again, but also get the ideas in long form that I wanted to put out there.
Well, they always say if you're good at something, don't do it for free anyhow.
Sure.
So I mean, there's nothing wrong. Some people paint pictures or build cars. You've built the Cube, and the thing that I liked about the Cube was it was conjugate without all the shit.
Well, see, that was my problem.
Bands on everything and chains on everything.
That was my issue. And I apologize. I got a little bit of a sinus infection. I'm on a Z-Pack right now, but I couldn't train on vacation, and I wasn't a guy that always trained just because I was competing. I like to train, and I would get a lot of questions from guys in home gyms. I don't have this. I don't have that. I don't have this. And it's like, well, there's actually a chapter in there just called Back to the Barbell. Let's get back to dumbbells and barbells. Yep. If you can't do it with that, we're not going to do it at all. And again, that was almost like a baptism back into the sport, because Westside almost is its own thing. It's its own way of lifting. It's its own thing. And I just wanted something that a soccer mom could pick up and do and apply, as well as a guy that was trying to make it at the high level of raw lifting. Yeah. I coached a lot of geared lifters in that way. It's just that the sport kind of navigated away from the geared lifting.
Yeah.
So I tended to put more of my focus in what I was writing, thinking, and coaching into the raw side. It's not, I want to coach everybody. Anybody that has interest in lifting and working with me, I would love to coach them. I just want to be relevant to what they're doing. I don't want to have to. I feel like you stay in your lane, right? If you want really good geared training, call Louie. Call a Brian Carroll. At 1020 Life seems to be a great program. So you got systems out there, Big Iron, those guys. Let those guys stay in their lane. Let me stay in my lane. Yeah. And there's some crossover, and I can help you if you really need it. But my answer for that is I'm always going to point you in the right direction. Like Coach Logan was asking me about Olympic lifting. I have somebody, if I get a client that wants to do Olympic lifting or like a hybrid system, I consult with them every single time. I don't try to touch the Olympic stuff.
Yeah.
I can do it. I did it in football, as far as coaching it. But to say I'm an expert, or to overlook the opportunity to ask a guy for help that's a mile away from me, I would be an asshole.
Right.
So that goes very much back into trying to right a lot of wrongs. For a long time, I thought hard work and aggression was the answer for everything. It's not. And sometimes the answer is I don't know, but I will find out. And I've tried to do that more and more for my clients, and more just in general. I never speak in absolutes anymore. I went away from the box squats for a long time. Guess what I was doing whenever I got injured? Box squats.
Right.
So I never say an exercise is unnecessary. I never say an exercise won't work, because you will then inevitably find the one person that needs exactly what you shut off.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong. I think people get into tribes.
Sure.
They don't want to do box squats, and and you'll hear it. You'll listen to podcasts where guys will talk shit about Louis' system, but they're 26 years old, and maybe super strong, but that system works. That system's produced some great lifters, and you know what? Your system's probably going to work too, and Judd's system's going to work, and my system's going to work, and it's going to work for some people. It's going to not work for others. When you talked about your cube method and it just being basically a gathering of your training logs, the good thing about it was I can't stand getting a training book that says the technical name for a hamstring instead of hamstring.
Right.
Or if you're going to talk to me about parasympathetic versus sympathetic nervous system, just shut the fuck up.
Right.
Tell me what you did and give me your reasoning behind why you did it. Don't talk over my head because I'm not getting anything out of your book. So there's something to be said about a simple training plan that puts you on the right path. And all you have to really do is put the work in with that. And it's the same way with your program. It's the same way with Wendler's program. You can't fuck up the cube and you can't fuck up 531 if you just follow them, you know?
Yeah, it's you know, what's the saying? An expert can explain the impossible in 5 words or less. It's something like that, you know. And that's kind of what it ended up being when the question was asked. When we were looking at this mass of writing that I had submitted, it was like, okay, we expanded on it. Now, what can we cut from it? And we really just had this idea that it was just going to be a very straightforward, here's how I got to this, here's why I do it, and here's the X's and O's of it. And, you know, it was, as I said, as a guy that majored in English, I look back at it and I kind of cringe, but at the same time, I'm also proud of it because, man, I still get messages all the time from people that are like, I was almost out of lifting and I found your method and I'm doing this, or, you know, I read your book and I fell in love with training again. To me, man, that's as good as it gets. Like, I'm really at a human level where I just want to help people. And I know what it feels like. You know, in the last couple of years, I've really battled the desire to train at all. You know, I kind of got to a point where I was like, every time that I get strong, I have another surgery. And I became fearful of getting strong because that meant I was going to have another surgery. So then it became, I'm fearful of training at all. Well, then I started rowing and I started doing some of the conditioning work and started feeling ultimately just night and day better. And it was like, training doesn't have to be what it was. Training needs to be what I need right now.
Absolutely.
And much like you say, the evolution of a person, if I'm training the same way at 50 that I was at 25, either I wasn't training very hard at 25 or I'm holding on to the wrong thing at 50. You know, I don't want to knock anybody that's out there still getting after it. Like Judd, he's going for the world record at 60. But that's scaled, right?
Right.
And for me, I see a lot of guys well into their 40s, well into their 50s, and okay, that's great that they're at that level, but what are they still compromising? And for me, it just wasn't fair to compromise my son, my family, my friends anymore. And I think the injury showed me how much my family needed me back.
Right.
And because, to be completely honest, as sad as it is, not one person in my family knew I was competing the day I fell.
Yeah.
You know, that's how disconnected I was.
Yeah.
And from the pretty picture that you paint on Instagram and Facebook, everybody's like, dude, I'd trade. And I'll tell you a funny story about that. I'll never forget the day after I got the invite to Westside. Louis had given me Greg Penora's number to talk to him. And I called him up and I said, hey man, very excited to be training with you. I said, but first of all, I look up to you so much. Like, I can't even believe it. Like, he was as big a celebrity in my head as anybody. And he said, wait a minute. He said, so you're coming up here? I was like, yeah. He said, that's cool. He said, man, I'm just a guy. He said, aren't you married with a kid? And I said, yeah. He said, I'd trade with you in a second. And I'll never forget that, because when I got up there and, you know, the marriage was falling apart and my family was falling apart, I remembered him saying that.
Yeah.
And I can remember going back to that moment in my head probably 1,000 times, being like, I had it all, you know. And even to go one step further, as we were talking before the podcast started, I said I was 260. I looked like an athlete. I had abs. I felt very good. What am I trying to do now? Get right back to that place that I was. Do I regret? Again, it's a hard thing to say because I regret individual decisions, but I think life has a way of kicking you a little bit when you're down, but also pushing you when you're flying. You know, and I think at this point in my life, I've started to make the right decisions, that life has given me some breaks. You know what I mean? And I think it all comes, I say, lose hope and gain strength. Don't just hope for things, work towards them.
Sure.
If you want to be a better man, work for it. If you want to if you want to stop drinking, you got to put down the bottle. If you want to stop smoking, you got to stop smoking a pack a day and smoke half a pack. And work.
Yeah, right.
It just has to be incremental, right?
Yep.
And for me, I would strongly advise anyone to pursue any dream that you have as hard as you can go, but take people with you. Mm-hmm. I never had to alienate anybody,
right?
But I did. Yeah. I just didn't feel they would understand. Shit, my dad's never seen me lift, and all he talks about he works in the automotive industry, so when I go places that he's connected to, they'll be like, "Man, your dad never shuts up about you. He's so proud of you." My dad didn't tell me he was proud of me, but now I go back to the day I came home from California, and he sat. I was in a wheelchair with both my legs extended, and he didn't even know where I lived at the time, and I had to give him my address. That's how bad it was. Yeah. So he walks in, and this is probably the most stoic, tough guy I know. I mean, the most gentle toughness, Mm-hmm. He walks in and he said, "I got to say two things to you, and I should have told you this and taught you this your whole life." He said, "Number one, I'm sorry. However the hell we got here, I'm sorry." He said, "If you can forgive me, we'll make it right." And then the other thing he said, "I should have told you every day, but I love you, mm-hmm. and I'm proud of you." Yeah. And man, that hit me so hard because those are things at that point in my life I couldn't say. I wasn't strong enough to say. And here's the guy who I modeled as, he was my vision of strength. He was my image of what a man was. If you had a Mount Rushmore of men in my life, boom, number one. Yeah. So him saying those words allowed me to start saying I'm sorry to people. And it allowed me to be proud of loving people. Like, if you see me with my son, you would never be able to say that guy doesn't love his kid.
Sure.
I'm not trying to embarrass him, kissing him and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's hugs, it's I love yous, it's all the stuff that I should have done since the day he was born that I just didn't say because I was like, "Oh, I'm a tough guy." Mm-hmm. And now Dad, I know. You don't have to tell me anymore. I'm going to tell you. So. Yeah. And I view that with everybody. I said that in a post on my Instagram story the other day. If I have ever told you I love you, I still mean it. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not in my life anymore, if I've told you that, I still carry that love with me. I just should have let you know better. Right. And now that's what I live for, is to make sure that people in my life are happy and, a part of my life, a part of my, I text people all the time. I call people all the time. I'm just desperate for that connection. Yeah, right. So it's a full circle thing, man.
Well, are you, that brings you a good question. Are you happy now?
Brother, and I say this without any bullshit in it. I wake up some mornings, and here's the thing. I'm making less money than I've ever made in my professional career. Mm-hmm. But when you aren't chasing things that cost money, when you've paid off your debts, you don't need to make that money. You don't need to chase these things. So I wake up every single day at peace because I don't have a bill collector calling me. I don't have stress of lies that I told to somebody or hurt that I caused my parents. All these things that used to be a part of my day, this storm of chaos. Yep. It's just quieted down. And it's not because I'm a better person. It's I make better choices. Mm-hmm. I'm still the same guy. I still have the same desires. I still have the same wants. I just want, I want a good life. Right. And my idea of a good life now is very radically different. It's taking my son camping. That's a high point for me. Mm-hmm. Before it was, I need a house on a golf course. I had it. I wasn't happy. I have a much smaller house. I have just an old pickup truck that I've had since it was 10,000 miles on it. But those things don't really matter to me anymore. Sitting down with people like yourself right now, conversation, a good meal, things like that. That's what motivates
Basics.
Me. Yeah.
Basics. That's cool. Let's. I should have opened with this, and because this is a pretty cool thing. What's up with you and Ty Childers? Because you turned me on to him. Because I was a guy. I mean, I had given up on country music altogether after like '92. Like Garth Brooks was the end of it. It was like, okay, this guy, this isn't country anymore. I was a Hank fan and David Allan Coe and Waylon Jennings, and when I heard that guy sing on your page, I was like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, well, so the interesting thing about that is when I really started trying to put things back into perspective and get my life going in the right direction, I mean, it's like I'm two different people, because before I was strictly rap music, strictly heavy metal, and I felt like that just kind of drove, it was like a soundtrack for that time in my life,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So now that I'm not training as much, that's where a lot of my music tastes come from how I train. So I'm doing a lot of meditation, I'm doing a lot of different things, yoga and kettlebell stuff. So I didn't need that aggressive, but I was looking for something, and I hear this song come on. It happened to be Feathered Indians, and it was just like the way that he worded things. You know, the feathers on my buckle make impressions on your thighs, and it was like, man, he's singing my life right now. Well, come to find out, he lives 12 miles away from where I do.
Yeah.
So there's a reason, and the way that he sings it, and the words that he uses, and on and on and on. So fell in love with the guy through his music on iTunes, and then realized I've heard this guy before. I heard him when he was playing at the Paddy Wagon in 2012, just to cover his bar tab.
Right.
You know,
right.
And that gave me some kind of hope in some way. It was like, man, he was at a point where he never thought he was going to get anywhere, and then now it's taken off. And in listening to interviews with him and listen to his music, he said, the closer I got to singing my life and the truth, the better it got.
Sure, yeah.
So again, that's kind of resonating with that mindset that I was in. And so I went up and I saw a couple shows back to back, blew me away. His wife, Sonora Mae, came out with her CD, and I went to the debut of that. Well, I happened to meet him out in the parking lot, and we talked. And it was a good conversation, really about Appalachia and just the difference he's making and things like that. So I left that conversation feeling pretty good, like if I ever see him again, we had that, and maybe he'll remember. So I'm in Brooklyn. I'd gone to Princeton for an event, or just to really stop in. And my friend James, who plays fiddle for Yellow Wolf, I don't know if you're familiar.
Oh, yeah.
So, and Yellow Wolf has kind of transitioned a lot too.
People are going to be amazed that I knew Yellow Wolf.
Right? Absolutely. But his music has transitioned a lot too, you know, from that southern rap to more of the singy and vocal stuff. And so I was like, James, you're in town, let's meet up. Well, lo and behold, he lives right there near where Brooklyn Bowl is. One of my favorite venues. I saw Phil Lesh and the Terrapin Band for the Grateful Dead up there. Amazing show. So Tyler Childers was there, so it was like, this is like a perfect storm. You know how I was saying sometimes the universe kind of gives you those little nudges?
Push, yeah.
So it was like, go, see the show. It ended up, we were talking about the nucleus, right, earlier in the conversation. And I've never been that guy. I've always been a fringe. I was always a nerd. I was always like into books and Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. But I was an athlete, so I was outcast by the nerds. I was outcast, but I was kind of that fringe guy. So I've never been the life of the party or the reason people came. But on this particular night, I had like 6 or 7 friends show up at this concert, which is a highlight of my life because man, people are here because I called them,
right.
You know, and that felt really good.
And when does that happen nowadays?
Exactly, you know especially, you know, and he played a set, and actually to put it best, the guy beside me, and this is another point of saying how the universe kind of nudges you. I'm standing at this event, and he's like, oh, are you from Brooklyn? You like this guy? I said, actually, I'm from Kentucky. He said, where? Berea, Kentucky. And the 3 people standing beside me, guys in their 50s and their wives, we all went to Berea College.
Oh, wow.
So it was crazy, right? But we're standing there, and one of the guys looked at me and he said, man, he said, whatever God is, he came to Brooklyn through Tyler Childers tonight. That's how good the show was. And I would not disagree with it. It was unlike any other show I'd ever seen. He only played 3 or 4 recorded songs. All of them were off-track stuff that he's been working on. And he played these crazy long guitar riffs. I mean, like very, very Leonard Skinner-esque, you know, Grateful Dead-esque, just jam sessions. And it was heavy. Like, it was emotionally heavy and whatnot. So I was staying right across the street. And I go outside and I see the band out there. And through the shows that I've seen, a couple of them recognize me enough to be like, man, I've seen you before. Yeah, you have. Well, out comes Tyler. And he's holding his guitar case. And he said, man, you look like somebody. And I said, yeah, my name's Brandon Lilly. He said, buddy, we're all somebody.
Yeah.
You know, but literally set his guitar case down, put his hands on top of it, and we sat there and talked for 15 minutes. He remembered who I was. He remembered our conversation. And that just led into a more personal type conversation. Sure. So I'm actually going this Saturday to see him in Detroit, and then I'm piggybacking with him to Chicago on Sunday. I don't know what will come of it, but I don't think anything bad can come from the place that I am in my life, where I give a damn about Kentucky,
right,
and I give a damn about my community, and he's doing the same thing. If that means just sharing a post here and there and cheering him on, I'll be his biggest fan. If that means doing something more active with him, I would jump at the opportunity, because whatever that guy's singing healed something in me, and I really mean that, and I don't expect everybody to get down with his music, because I probably wouldn't have a few years ago, but the point I am right now and the things he's singing about, man, I get it. I just connect with it.
If you can go on YouTube and download, there's a live version of him singing Hard Times.
Yeah.
If you can't get behind that music,
well,
there's
Coming
something
Down.
fucking wrong with
Do you know the song Coming Down?
Yes.
That's the one that tears me up inside, because it's like the sky's falling, and you're just looking for a way out.
Yep.
And you can't see it. And man, that one eats me up. And Follow You to Virgie, he might as well have been singing about my grandmother.
Right.
And he's just got a voice of Appalachia, and I connect with it so well, and I'm very thankful. I've probably gotten 30 minutes of his time.
Yeah, right.
And I left those 30 minutes feeling like I could do anything, just because he cuts it down to the core.
Yeah.
And he actually just followed me on Instagram, and I never made a fuss about it, but it was funny. I mentioned, I said, hey man, I really appreciate the follow. I said, just know it means a lot. And he sent back, he said, well, I seen you only had 112,000 followers, so I figured I'd give you a little help.
Give you one more.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's great.
But to me, that just solidified that he's not bullshit.
Yeah, right.
And that's a really, really nice feeling to see a guy like that he's sticking the middle finger up to the right people. Him
and Sturgill Simpson.
Well, Sturgill produces him, right?
Oh yeah. He's on his record label. Or something
so the cool thing about this is, Tyler played in Lexington at a place called the Manchester Music Hall. Great venue. It's an old tobacco building. It's a fantastic place. Look up, and I always stand in the same place when I go there. I go to a lot of shows.
Yeah.
And they bring in some, like Shooter Jennings. They bring in some cool people. So I'm standing there by my pole, and I turn around and look up. It's Kid Rock at Tyler's show.
Right.
I don't care if you like Kid Rock's music, but that dude knows music.
Yeah.
And he's played with some of the
talented.
best. Oh, he's unbelievable. Yeah. What's sad is that people make jokes about him because of some of the things he's done, but man, he's a badass musician. If you're a musician, you respect what he does. And he was up there cheering as loud as anybody, and I was like, for a guy that could literally be anywhere in the world, doing anything he wanted, and he's coming to a Tyler Childers show, you better hold on, because the ride's about to take off.
Yeah, I heard Kid Rock do Long-Haired Country Boy by Charlie Daniels at the time. I was like, wow, this guy is not just some clown, doing this white guy rap thing, It was pretty amazing.
So you familiar with Nirvana?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Nirvana, but I mean, the song "Where Did You Sleep Last Night"? Mm-hmm. Could you imagine Tyler Childers doing that cover?
Yeah.
That'd be a killer cover.
Yeah, right.
So, man, he played some offbeat stuff.
I've been trying to see him, and he was at I think he was at Iowa City.
How far is Detroit from here?
2 hours, but I'm heading to Florida tomorrow.
Oh, are you?
I've
got an extra. I've got an extra.
Are you kidding me?
No, I've got an extra. And he told me, so the cool thing about the Brooklyn show, not to interrupt you, man, he doesn't do encores.
Right.
He starts his show out talking about that. He's like, look, so we're going to play our asses off, and if we want to go all night, we'll go all night. But when we're done, we're done.
Yeah.
He said, I don't do encores. Cool enough. Well, his show ends, and, dude, people were just like, I think there was a minute where everybody was like, what the fuck was that? Because when it's not recorded stuff, you find out who the fans are.
Yep.
And it was just like this weird silence, and then all of a sudden people were like, that was amazing. And they started going crazy. So he's like, 5 minutes, people just screaming. And next thing you know, here he comes, and he's holding these New York pizzas. And he just starts handing them out to the crowd, slice by slice. And he's like, that's good enough for an encore.
Yeah.
People didn't leave.
Right.
They kept going, they kept going, they kept going, and then he comes down and plays Universal Sound. They did a 15-minute jam.
Wow.
In that. And dude, it was like time just stopped for a minute. And he said, I wouldn't do that anywhere. That was for Brooklyn. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
That was for Brooklyn. And walked off the stage.
Very cool.
And dude, the place just went nuts. And it was an emotional thing, and I don't know why. It was just one of those times where I felt like I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah.
It was something. Maybe it was him coming into his own. I don't know what it was, but it was really special. And whatever happens with our relationship, whether it stays as a message here and there on Instagram or, shaking his hand at the show when I go see him. I mean, dude, I'm just thankful to know the guy.
Yeah. I sent him as soon as you posted that. I went and checked him out, and I clicked on Hard Times because just the way it sounded.
Yeah.
I remember the old Dusty Rhodes bit from wrestling back in the 80s, Hard Times.
Yep.
And I clicked on it, and I was like, holy shit. And immediately I got off and messaged him on Instagram. I said, if you're ever in the area, I'd love to get you on the podcast. This is just...
Yeah.
But we were going to go see him in Iowa City, and I can't remember what happened. We were doing something else that weekend, but my wife is from Iowa. She went to the University of Iowa in Iowa City, so she was this would have been perfect because she always wanted to go back there. But I wasn't headed to Florida tomorrow morning.
I hear you. I got an extra. I've thought about trying to do something on Instagram to give that ticket away, like, come out hang with me for the night,
right.
Whatever. I don't know, but my luck, I'd pick some super weirdo, but man, it's cool that he's going to Detroit because Detroit's they've had their own hard times,
right?
And I feel like I've been up there a few times in the last couple of years. For Relentless a few years back, but then
we just did an event for that this weekend. Yeah.
So then there was that, but then also just for different business opportunities. And man, you can feel it. It's like you can feel the people, they want it to get better.
Yeah.
They want it, they're fighting for it. And man, that's what inspires me.
Mm-hmm.
People who are in the throes of the fire and they're not giving up. I mean,
you could make it out of Detroit. You're going to be battle hardened.
Yeah, for sure. Detroit's a tough city. My dad works up there a lot. And like I said, he was in the auto industry. So Detroit is a black eye on the United States. Has been. It's in the midst of really becoming something else. The food culture there is growing.
Yeah.
The art culture there is growing, and those two things seem to go hand in hand with recovery.
Yeah.
Like Lexington went through a lot of that. My home.
I love Lexington.
It's a great city, right? And I don't know if you haven't been down there in the last few years, but they've really done a lot to the downtown area. The local food scene is very, very strong. The art community is very, very strong.
Yep, I was just down there last spring. And I was amazed by it, man.
It's a great place. If you ever get a chance to go, I just went to Keeneland, the horse races.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody talks about the Derby and Churchill Downs and stuff, but Keeneland is just a smaller, it's just a great place.
It might have been when I was down there because there was some big giant horse race going on that weekend. There was no hotels.
Yeah. So Keeneland, they're open 2 weeks in the spring, 2 weeks in the fall. And the reason I think people like it so much, it's $5 to get in.
Yeah.
But it's like the Great Gatsby. Everybody's dressed up. Everybody's, got their hats on.
Right.
And for a day, you get to get out of your life and just pretend. You're no different than anybody else at the track. Everybody's there to have a good time, and everybody looks the part. Everybody gets to dress up a little bit. I mean, I think you need those things.
Yeah.
You need things to look forward to, and that's definitely one. I mean, I just went with my best friend of all time, and we had the best time ever.
That's a Kentucky thing for sure.
It is. Yeah.
My best friend, and people who can blame this on him, Kerry Overfeld, his big line is Kentucky's known for two things: fast horses and ugly women. So that was always his thing.
Man, I don't know. I'll agree with the fast horses, but man, I've seen some heartbreakers out there too.
Kerry Overfeld, you can address any comments to him.
Kerry's awful pretty himself, so he might have higher standards than I do.
He's not exactly an underwear model, that's for sure.
But I don't know. It's funny we're talking about pretty women because we were just talking about love at first sight, and I said, man, people ought to be looking for the girls that love at second glance.
Sure, right.
Because love at first sight is the exterior. Love at second glance is the girl you see and you think she's normal, and then you notice something about her that'll knock you out.
Yep.
And Kentucky's got a lot of both.
My wife and I hated each other when we met each other.
Hey,
I just did not
opposites
like each
attract,
other at all,
right?
A couple weeks later, we're dating,
Yeah.
So that's the way it works. Well, I've taken up enough of your time. You're about ready to go talk to Judd's kids. I want to really thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Anything you want to throw out there before we go?
Well, listen, wherever you are in life, whatever you're going through, find things that make you happy, the little things. Don't always look at the big stuff. Don't always sit and think about what you don't have. Look around you. I mean, literally stop and look around at what you do have and just appreciate it, because life is so fleeting and it goes by so fast. And I wish that I'd appreciated a lot of things a little sooner in life, but anyhow, that's enough of the philosophy stuff. I just appreciate everybody that sends messages, leaves comments. The interaction is what drives it for me now. It's not anything beyond that, and helping people. So if you're out there and you have anything that you want to ask me about regarding this or anything else, I'm just a DM away. So shoot me the questions, and I'll try the best to give you the answers.
Amen, brother. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, man, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Lilly.
Thanks a lot, dude.
This has been The Refined Savage. See ya.